Gun Resource meeting for 16th of February. Very welcome, warm to you all. First, fire drills. There's no evacuation plan for tonight, so if you hear anything alarm going off, please make your way to the car park. You all know the drills. Right, moving on to the first part of the agenda. Apologies and absence.
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillors Chapman, Purdy, Flitter and Swindle.
Thank you, Move. Next item is approval of the minutes. Would you like to move them? Seconded. All those in favour? Unanimous. Stuart? Rupert Lord. Public participation. Have anybody? No, move on. Anybody got any interest? No? Okay. Right, moving on to the first item then. Item number 6. Oh, sorry. Question pursuit, number 15. Any questions? No? Okay. Item number 6, Treasury Management Annual Report 21-22. Karen.
Thank you, Chair. So this, as it says, is an annual report which essentially compares the Treasury management activities with our strategy. The first part of the report sets out some external context. I'm sure you're all aware of the cost of living crisis, inflationary pressures, and the war in Ukraine, which has had an impact on interest rates. Because we only have one loan with Public Works Loans Board, which is at a fixed rate, the increase in interest rates has actually been a benefit to us because it's meant that the cash that we can lend out on the markets now gets a much better return. And in fact, if you look at the table in table 5 in 2.5.9 of the report, you can see that for 21-22 we had an original budget of £37,000 for interest. But we actually got almost £54,000. And for the current year, which obviously isn't covered in this report, we've got significantly more, I think more than £200,000 to date for interest, which shows how rates went up during 21-2, but went up even more in 22-23. So I hope that at the next cycle I'll be reporting more on the current year. The next part of the report is the compliance report, which compares our activities against the code. And I have to declare that there is one area where we haven't complied with our own strategy, and that is with regard to interest rate exposures. So while it's been good news that interest rates have gone up, what it does mean is that because they've gone up more than we expected, we set our target too low, and we haven't complied with this indicator. So it's the indicator for interest rate exposure, and what it tries to do is to say if there's a 1% increase or reduction in interest rates, what will be the impact? And because at the beginning of the year interest rates were really low, the difference between it going from 0.25% to 1.25% is a lot less than the difference from 2% to 3% in cash terms. So we've actually had more money to lend, and we've lent it at higher rates of interest, and that's meant we've reached our own target. But as I've explained earlier, it's just a target. It hasn't actually cost us any money because we've actually earned more interest. It's just showing that if we couldn't replace the investments we had at a similar or higher rate, there would have been a risk that it would have cost us. So I hope I've explained that clearly. It's not the easiest thing to explain. But every other measure we've complied with. So that's it. Thank you.
I mean, not a great deal to us, really, Karen, because it's pretty straightforward. And of course, it relates back to 21, 22, and things have indeed changed again this year, haven't they, with the increase in interest rates. So really, I suppose I'm looking future-wise rather than retrospectively. And just wondering to myself, and I wrote down here, this new interest rate rise of the Bank of England, is it being offset by ourselves in the sense of investment versus loans? Are we in a more sort of in a parity situation?
No, any interest rate rise is to our benefit because what we borrow is at a fixed rate of interest, so that doesn't change. But what we lend out goes up with interest rate rises.
As you say, it's advantageous to us. That's interesting. I don't mind moving the report, Chair, just to get us cracking.
Thank you, Mike. That's for a second. Thanks, Chair.
I'm happy to second the report. Thank you once again, Karen. I like the reference to the fading of lockdown and the pingdemic. I really hope that's the last we've seen of that. So thank you very much. Happy to second.
Okay, moving on. Item number 7. Return officers' fees arrangement for election. Go through this.
That's me, Chair, if you would like me to introduce it. So, first of all, apologies from Paul Wilson this evening. He's not attended because this item's on the agenda, and Paul is the returning officer for district and parish council elections, which I'm sure some of you will be slightly aware is on the horizon. So without repeating the report verbatim, the returning officer is responsible for the delivery of the election for the district council and also for parish councils. And under legislation, the returning officer is entitled to receive recompense for expenditure incurred in the delivery of an election for those authorities. And the legislation also makes provision for a scale of expenses to be fixed according to that. This report in front of you sets out the fees payable to the returning officer. There is delegated authority for the returning officer to determine fees paid to presiding officers and poll clerks and other people working on the election, but it wouldn't be appropriate for the returning officer to set their own fees. So this report's brought forward to you this evening to recommend that, having reviewed the fees payable and compared them to the fees payable to the returning officer for parliamentary elections, which isn't Mr. Wilson, that's myself, it would result in effectively a 10% increase on the current figure that we pay to the returning officer for contested and uncontested elections, as well as the count fee for those contested elections. So in effect, the change would be going from £47.50 per electoral area in terms of uncontested elections to £52.60, and where there are contested elections, it would be £52.60 per electorate or per 1,000 electors. So for every 1,000 electors, you pay another £52.60. So in effect, we're recommending an increase of 10%. This hasn't been reviewed for a number of years, and based on the recommended approach, it would result in an overall increase in the fee for the returning officer of somewhere in the region of £700 if all parish council elections were uncontested, and based on the number of parishes that were contested in May 2019, it resulted in an increase of just over £1,000 for parish council elections. In effect, this is danger money for the returning officer. They are personally responsible. You as a council are not responsible for the delivery of elections, so Paul does risk having to go to an election court, and that's why returning officers do get paid additional fees for their work. So I won't say anything further on that, Chair. Hopefully the report's fairly self-explanatory.
Okay, any questions? Neil?
Does Paul have a choice about being the returning officer?
No, he doesn't, because you as a council have appointed him as the returning officer.
Thank you.
Thank you, James, and Jason as well. I'm happy to move the motion. I have no questions.
Minded,
Thank you, Mike.
for the good of the democratic process, we need these officers to properly oversee the process. There's no doubt about that. But can I say, in 20 years service to this council, this is the first time I've realised that we actually separately pay them. I always thought, very naively, that it was just part of their salaried duty. I mean, I know we pay the counters, you know, because they're especially coming in, giving up of their time. But if I'm reading this correctly, for instance, the returning officer for this coming election will receive £52.60 times 70. A not inconsiderable sum. However, where does this money come from?
So in terms of district council elections, the district council pays for all fees
There's
associated
no
with
government
district council.
grants towards.
No, not for district council elections. And for parish council elections, that's recharged to the parishes. So what we will do after this evening, subject to your agreement, is communicate.
No wonder they only
revised
take
fees.
place every 4 years.
Well, going back to what you said before, some authorities do build the returning officer fee into the salary of a chief executive or whoever the post holder is who's the returning officer. That's something that you could consider doing in future if you wish to. I'll pass that back to the returning officer.
You learn something every day, Mike, don't you? Item number 8. Hawley Park Tennis Court Resurfacing Capital Programme bed.
Thank you, Chair. That one's myself. A good news story, really. We've been offered through the Lawn Tennis Association around £45,000 to upgrade the tennis courts in Hawley's Park. So that will include resurfacing, relining. It'll also include a gated access and then through their Club Spark website so that people can book on to use the tennis courts in the future. So this grant is fully funded by the LTA. So the request is to put it into the capital programme, which will go to committee on the 2nd of March. As part of that, though, we are looking to introduce a fee to use the tennis courts, which will only be in Matlock, in Hawley's Park. So obviously, we do have tennis courts in Ashbourne and Bakewell as well, but the LTA only have enough money to fund one area, which they've chosen as Hawley's Park. So we're looking at implementing a fee of £6 per court as well, included in that, just to really the upkeep of the court as well. We can also then track how many people are using the courts. And so, yeah, that will go into the fees and charges report that Karen's delivering later as well. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Becky. How will they hire them, pay for the courts? How does that work?
So it is going to be all online bookings. We will have the facility to do it here as well by telephone if people can't access the online system. But yeah, it's that they've got their own website called Club Spark where they can log in. They'll get login details and they'll get given a code as part of their booking, and then it's a PIN code access onto the court, so it's kind of locked, and they then have access to get onto the court, and that will then change for the next booking. The code will.
And Chair, can I just ask again? Obviously, this has happened in other areas, and how's it gone from sort of free courts to paying? Do people seem happy with it?
Yeah, I mean, we have done some consultation with users that we know of that use the courts at the minute, and they're obviously very happy for the upgrade. They know that it needs upgrading soon, and it's something that they are asking of us. But again, from their point of view, they're saying £6 is quite a small fee, because obviously there's at least 2 of you playing, potentially up to 8 people can play on one court, doing doubles and switching over. So the people that we have consulted with are quite happy with that £6 fee moving forward. I think from their point of view as well, it's what they're getting back is a brand new state-of-the-art tennis court.
Councillor Murphy.
Thanks, Chair. Did we make any other applications for Ashbourne or Wirksworth, or was it we applied? Sorry, and Bakewell. at the same time, is it? Or did we just apply for Matlock?
So we didn't really apply. They approached us initially and just said that they've got this Parks Improvement Fund. They're looking to upgrade tennis courts. There's one for Derbyshire Dales.
Right.
And they suggested to us that looking through their data is that Hawleys Park was like the most attended one, the busiest one, because it's where its location in the town centre. So it's kind of off of their suggestion and their recommendation is that Hawleys Park would be the one.
So,
I mean, there's nothing saying down the line we can't do the others.
Right.
But at the minute they've only got funding for one in the
great
district.
news.
Yeah.
Right,
Thank you.
Councillor Lees.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Are we, this 45,000, Becky, is that a fixed price that's going to do the work, or is that just a token towards it?
So it will be fully funded. So that's their estimate of what it will cost. And then in the meantime, if it does get approval, then they'll have contractors out to come and give us a full quote. Whatever that quote is, if it's 47,000, that's the money that we will receive. So it's all fully funded, nothing
So whether
from ourselves.
whether it all of a sudden ends up at 60,000, that'll still be funded.
Yeah, I think the 45,000 is pretty accurate from what their findings that they've done and other courts that they've done work in. But obviously, it does need to be finalised exactly what the full amount will be, but it will be fully funded.
So it's not costing this council anything then?
No.
Thank you.
Members, debate? No debate? I'll go straight. Oh, can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Lees? What? Okay. All those in favour? No? Doing very well, aren't we? Item number 9, fees, charges for 23-24.
Thank you. So this is a joint report that's from me, the Directors of Regulatory Services, Corporate and Customer Services and Community Environmental Services, covering the fees and charges for the coming year 23-24. The year-on-year consumer price index, which is quoted in the report, we've recently had the figures for January and there's now been a reduction to 10.1%, but still much higher than we're used to seeing at this time of year. So our usual practice is to inflate fees and charges for the coming year by slightly more than the current rate of inflation, around 10%. But officers recognise that increases of that magnitude might not be acceptable to the public, especially at this time of a cost of living crisis. So service managers have used their knowledge of their own individual services and their customers to set the proposed fees and charges. And the fees that are proposed in this report range from being frozen to 0% to around 10%. Most of the proposed increases are around 4 or 5%. Where officers have recommended fee increases of more than 5% or that they be frozen, and explanations given in the report. So we're asking members to approve the fees and charges that are set out in Appendix 1 to 13, and also to note that the fees and charges that might come out of the Clean and Green review are due to be presented to Council in March. Thank you.
Question for Karen? No? Oh, Mike.
Chair. I'd be the first to complain, so I'm pleased you picked me up. Yeah, it's quite a lengthy report, so I'll ask you a few small questions. First of all, what I didn't see, but I may have overlooked, is that some of the fees, for instance, charge for replacing green wheelie bins or indeed any bin, we used to have a sort of exemption, as it were, if it could be shown that that had been damaged through the use of the contractors. Does that still exist? And I'm just trying to think of the detail. The charge for removing bulk items there. Again, I seem to remember we had exemptions for pension, those in receipt of an old age pension, for instance, example. Am I right?
Okay. The first one of those about wheel bins that were damaged by the contractor. Obviously, I'm not the manager for that service, but as far as I'm aware, that's still in place. So it's the wheel bin charges usually apply if there's no evidence that the contractor's damaged it. And they're generally where people move into new homes, I believe. But you would have to check that with the manager of that service if you wanted. But that's my understanding.
Then a very simple question. Is the pest control service back in action now?
Again, I don't know that.
Oh, you don't
would
know.
have to ask.
I mean, I can understand it was suspended during the pandemic, but I would have thought that, and it may well be that people are wanting to call out for infestation of one sort or another. And then finally, very tongue-in-cheek, how do you set about the process for authorising proof of life? I might want to do that sometime.
Okay. Well, first of all, I've not answered your question yet about the bulky waste, and that is we don't have any concessions on that. We removed the concessions quite a few years ago after a review by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and I think James deals with proof of life, so I'll pass that on to him.
Yeah, I don't personally do it here, Councillor Ratcliffe. The solicitors do it, but I have done it at the previous authority, and it's simply to provide a letter to confirm that you are indeed alive and resident at an address in the district. So it's something that it's a service that people who don't live in the district, may live overseas but have a connection to the district. They tend to use it more than most, other people. Indeed. Well, yes, and there's another process for that, but yes, indeed.
Okay, open to debate. No debate. I'll go straight to the vote. Can I have a mover and seconder?
I'm happy to move.
Seconder?
Obviously, there's a lot of hard work goes into preparing this report, and I'm pleased to see that the cost of living crisis has been considered, quite carefully. What's happening to the people in our communities, and for example, I'm pleased that the store market fees have remained, the same to try and encourage our award-winning Bakewell market to continue. Thank you.
Okay, it's been second. Thank you very much. That's been moved and seconded. All those in favour? We're flying along. Item number 10, beg your pardon. Asset Management Plan Landholding Review. Mark's going to do the presentation of this, obviously, but what I spoke to Mark and to James, so he's going to do the presentation and we're going to take it in block on the vote. Thank you. Have comments in between if we need to, but we'll take it in block, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So it's a fairly self-explanatory report with just a couple of items to add. So there are 4 different community asset transfers proposed in this report on covering 5 areas of land. Just in terms of the consultation, in terms of the first site number 1, land at Pasturgate, Thorpe, we've had a response from the parish council saying that they are pleased to note the proposals and have no objections. With regards to site numbers 2 and 3, which are the 2 in Doveridge, we've had a response from the parish council, and we've had a discussion with them about the proposals for the site. There are 2 areas of concern in this, and one of which has been raised by the ward member as well, in terms of how much support there is locally for the parish taking on these 2 areas of land. We've had a discussion with the parish council, and they've actually commissioned a resident survey, a village survey, which went out a week ago on their website and is live for a further 3 weeks. So we are going to wait for the results of that, and I'll be just slightly amending the recommendation to take account of that in a moment. The other concern was about part of the site number 3, the pond. There's an area of woodland next to it, which is, if you look at the plan, the sort of the site's sort of in 2 halves. And it's the second half of the site. That woodland contains some mature trees, and there were some concerns about taking on the responsibility for management of that issue. Again, we've reassured the parish council in that area has been surveyed by the council within the last 18 months, and as a result of that, 2 trees that were seen to be dangerous were removed. So it has been managed up to date, but there is an exercise going on at the moment where there's a survey of all the council's trees taking place. And that survey, this site will be surveyed as part of that within the next month. And again, if there's anything that comes out of that survey, any dangerous trees on that site or any trees that need action, we will deal with that as the district council before the site is transferred. So we've made that clear to the parish council, which has allayed their concerns in that area on that particular point. The third or the fourth site, the recreation ground in Wirksworth, just had positive comments back from the town council and the ward member, and the final site number 5, which is the new plinth for Shawcroft, for Shrovetide in Shawcroft, which is shortly to get its first use. We've had a response from Councillor Archer supporting the proposal, but not had any other further comments back. On that one, obviously we are very close to the Shrovetide event, but should this be approved tonight, colleagues in legal departments are set up to get the lease completed on Monday ahead of the event on Tuesday. So it is very much last minute. That's not really our doing. It's just the way the timing has worked out of the plinth being built and getting the lease agreement in place and the timing of committees. So, but everything is in train to make that to have that lease completed in time for the event. So the one other thing, just to go back to the recommendations, with regard to the recommendation for site number 2, so recommendation 2 on the report, I was just going to add the wording that, so it says that, subject to a positive response to the village survey commissioned by Derbyshire Parish Council, and then it continues as in the recommendation that site number 2 and site number 3 and adjoining land are transferred to Derbyshire Parish Council on the terms outlined in the report. So it's just, we're going to wait for the results of that survey, of that village survey, just in case there are any a large number of negative comments. The parish aren't expecting that, nor are we, but we will wait for that survey to take place. So other than changing that recommendation, nothing further to add. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions or comment? Councillor Paul.
Considering being the Shrovetide, obviously you're saying it's about the lease. Well, obviously the original steps and where we plinth that we had is gone. You know, if you don't manage to dot the I's and cross the T's, where do we go? Because it's already built. Are they able to use it for those 2 days? Because otherwise, what's the contingency plan that you feel that we should put in place?
Well, I think that there's a difference between the event itself and all of the health and safety checks and the process that goes through to allow the event to take place, which is all has all been completed, and the actual property agreement for the land on which it stands, which is obviously in the middle of Shawcroft Car Park. So the lease is a fairly straightforward document. We've been in discussion with the solicitors for Shrovetide Committee, and everybody is ready to get that lease, including our own staff, to get that lease completed. So what it's really waiting for is the approval of this committee this evening. So I don't see there being a problem. There's no problem. It's all agreed. It's just a matter of getting it done, and everything is in place to do that.
So they will be able to use it on the particular days if the legal side of the land being given over to the Royal Shrovetide Committee.
Yeah, there is a risk, but it's a property risk rather than a risk to people and the event. Well, it's a risk of responsibility for the property and that sort of thing. So it's not. It does need to be in place, and we are hoping that. We're more than hoping. We've got everything in place for it to be in place. But it's nothing that is particularly going to stop the event happening or anything like that. But it is good practice legally to have that in place before it's used in earnest. It just so happens we're right up against the event. If we were, a few weeks, if we're in the middle of the summer or something, then yeah. But we are where we are, and so that's just how the timing of it has worked out. But it is all agreed. I'm very confident that it will all be, if it's approved this evening, it will all be in place by the end of Monday.
Any more comment? Neil.
Thanks, Mike. The Doveridge one there, I think it's like a duck pond and some woodland, isn't it? Once it's been passed over to the parish council, I'm sure they're going to take very good care of it. It'll be something that they think is pretty important. Do we have an option to provide extra services or support if they've got any questions that need dealing with before they take it over?
Well, all of these transfers are a result of discussions with the town and parish councils involved, or the other organisations involved. So all the terms have been agreed, and obviously there's a dialogue that goes on right until the point of transfer. So yeah, the idea with these is not to. A number of these transfers have come from requests from the other party rather than us suggesting that they take something on. So that dialogue will take place right up until transfer, and any concerns that they've got, we will try to address, as we are doing with the trees. The aim is for the transfer to take place smoothly, with them feeling that they're fully informed about everything that goes with taking on the land. And that's the procedure with all of the community asset transfers we do, all of those on this report and the ones that have gone before.
So we're essentially delegating this choice to you to put it through once Doveridge say, yeah, great, we'll go with this.
Yeah, I think that the paragraph that I've added, it would only be if there was an overwhelmingly negative response, then we would bring it back to it wouldn't go through, and I'd bring it back to a further meeting of this committee to have a look at. If there's a positive response, it will just go ahead. So it's just giving that option for that survey to take place.
Any other comment? Councillor Bond.
Yeah, I'd recommend that you declare a personal interest, but I don't see any reason why you can't vote on it.
Likewise, Chair. I'm part of the Shrovetide as well, so.
Are you on the committee?
Yes, sir.
Councillor?
Yeah.
That's slightly different. I would recommend that you don't vote on it. If it's moved on block, it hasn't been moved or seconded yet. So, you know, whilst the chair indicated an aspiration for that, it's up to someone to move it first. So,
Okay. Councillor Murphy, debate?
It's just a question really, and it's probably more to Stuart really. It's about the key to this new plinth and whatever is as long as the insurers are happy. You know, obviously they're waiting on this transfer to take place before they'll give you full cover, or where are you with that?
May I respond, Chair, to that one? With regard to cover this, obviously, as some of the colleagues know, just after Christmas we sit with the emergency planning board, have an emergency planning meeting with everything, insurers, etc. There is insurance in place currently, which is due to be renewed next year, so everything's in place.
Yeah.
For the
And the transfer
game.
of ownership doesn't affect that.
No. Merely purely insurance, which is in place.
Thanks, Stuart.
Okay. So we're going to vote in block. I want to move it and a seconder. Councillor Archer?
Yeah, I'm happy to move it. I've got some slight concerns as an upward that moving the plinth slightly nearer to the Clifton goal is a downward plot. But don't think so. But despite that, in the spirit of goodwill, I'll happily move it. Thank you.
I want a seconder. Hannah, thank you.